मॉर्निंग. स्वच्छ सागर सुरक्षित सागर अशा नावाचं एक अभियान जुलै महिन्यापासून भारतात सुरू झालेलं आहे. काही आंतरराष्ट्रीय करारांवर भारताने स्वाक्षऱ्या केल्या आणि त्या करारांचा भाग म्हणून संपूर्ण किनारपट्टीची स्वच्छता करणं याला ज्याला युद्ध पातळीवर म्हणतात, तर तशा प्रकारे कारण आपल्याला भारताला 7,500 किलोमीटर लांबीचा किनारा लाभलेला आहे आणि त्या संपूर्ण किनाऱ्याची स्वच्छता करणं म्हणजे गेली अनेक वर्ष 17 सप्टेंबर हा कोस्टल क्लीनअप डे, इंटरनॅशनल कोस्टल क्लीनअप डे असा म्हणून साजरा केला जातो. आपल्याकडे त्याच्यामध्ये कोस्ट गार्ड, नेव्ही आणि काही लोकल बॉडीज या सहभागी व्हायच्या. आपल्याकडे अंधेरीमध्ये अफरोज शहाचं उदाहरण आहे. त्यांनी एक व्हॉलंटरी प्रोग्रॅम म्हणून कोस्टल क्लीनअपची मोठी मोहीम चालवली. अशा प्रकारचे व्हॉलंटरी एफर्ट्स सिटिझन्स लेवलला हे पण जगभरात अनेक ठिकाणी चालू आहेत. पण त्याच्या पलीकडे जाऊन, कारण या सगळ्याची मर्यादा आहे, त्याचं शास्त्र काय आहे, त्याची आवश्यकता काय आहे हे सगळ्यांना कळणं आणि त्यातनं असं म्हणू शकतो अशा प्रकारची कृती ही सगळ्यांच्या स्तरावर होणं, सातत्यपूर्ण होणं आणि त्यातनं किनारपट्टी ही स्वच्छ होणं असा संपूर्ण उद्देश डोळ्यासमोर ठेवून हा 3 जुलै ते 17 सप्टेंबर असे 75 दिवसाची एक मोठी मोहीम, मोठं अभियान हे केंद्र सरकारच्या 6 मंत्रालयांनी मिळून सुरू केलं. त्या व्यतिरिक्त अनेक व्हॉलंटरी ऑर्गनायझेशन्स, स्वयंसेवी संस्थासुद्धा याच्यामध्ये सहभागी झालेल्या आहेत. या अभियानाचा भाग म्हणून आज आपल्याकडे आपण व्याख्यानमाला सुरू करतो आहोत. या व्याख्यानमालेचं पहिलं पुष्प गुंफण्यासाठी प्राध्यापक पुरुषोत्तम काळे आपल्या इथे उपस्थित झालेले आहेत. मी राजवाडे सर आणि काळे सरांना विनंती करतो की त्यांनी कृपया स्टेजवर यावं. हो, मी राजवाडे सरांना आमंत्रित करतो. ते काळे सरांचा परिचय करून देतील आणि आपण कार्यक्रमाला सुरुवात करू. धन्यवाद.
थँक्यू अभिजित सर. आय एम indeed happy that we are hosting this particular lecture by Dr. Purushottam Kale. As it has been explained that this is a part of a national campaign, and the campaign is by different ministries of Government of India, Department of Science and Technology, and MOES, that is Ministry of Earth Sciences. And as Vijay sir has already said that when we look at our map, okay, for some reason always we are looking north, okay, in terms of our politics, in terms of our strategic requirement. We always look at the north. We look at the Himalayas and problems over there with Pakistan, China and so on. If we pay our attention to the south, if you look the other way, okay, you turn yourself and look down on the map as if, you'll find that there is a south which culminates into Kanyakumari, and around that fulcrum lies, as Abhijit has very rightly pointed out, a very large coastline with the seas. And one of the sea near our country is named after the country itself. It is called Indian Ocean, the IOR it is called, Indian Ocean region, the whole thing. On one side, on the other side of course there is Bay of Bengal. And down south, the whole sea extends right up to the, I suppose, Antarctic. So the whole point I'm making is that the perception which we have about our country is essentially actually both the seafaring country and also the mountainous country, which is towards the Himalayas. So this particular question of awareness of this particular fact, that historically and culturally we are in a way so much connected with seas, is not properly engraved in our minds, in our understanding, in our psyche. And that is why we don't behave the way we should be actually behaving. तर ह्या सगळ्याचा मतितार्थ मी जे सांगतो आहे तो असा आहे की आपल्याला सागर जितका महत्त्वाचा आहे तितका आपल्याला समजत नाही किती महत्त्वाचा आहे. त्याचा संबंध फक्त मासे खाण्याशी नाही आहे, त्याचा संबंध अनेक गोष्टींशी आहे. दी टॉपिक विच वी हॅव सिलेक्टेड टुडे इज अ व्हेरी केअरफुल्ली टायटल्ड प्रोग्राम, दॅट इज the coastal biodiversity and its impact, economic impact. That is the topic. And we are very happy to have Dr. Purushottam Kale amongst us. Like us, he's a fantastic teacher of zoology and botany. I'm going to read out this biodata for the reason that students should understand that what it takes to build such a resume. Okay, we only yesterday, I think 2 days ago, we had a seminar on in some other department, resume building, how to build a resume. I said in that resume writing is an art, all right, but you should have something to write about within the resume. So that's the reason why I'm going to read this. We have Dr. Purushottam Kale amongst us, who towards the end of his career was principal of College of Computer Science and IT at Mahad. And he has been head prior to that for a long number of years, it is about 43 years, has been head of Department of Zoology in Jhunjhunwala College at Ghatkopar. In his experience of this 43 years, he has been a very long and varied experience of 38 years of guiding students towards research degrees in MSc and PhD of University of Mumbai. It's a very rare distinction that he has post-graduation in zoology and botany, and of course PhD. Has 41 publications to his credit. Anybody with any small understanding of research will know the weightage of this kind of research work. He has many projects, it's EIA projects with Department of Environmental Engineering at IIT Powai here in Mumbai. Various research projects of UGC he has under his belt. He is working for Paryavaran Dakshata Manch, Mandal, Thane, Vanaparva, Vishnugupta Khed, etc. Many professional memberships, life member of over 20 organizations, and many honorary, I should say, responsibilities to his credit, so which I am not going to read right now. The recipient of titles of Best Teacher and Paryavaran Mitra, and currently is interested in education, and that is particularly outside the classroom. To have this particular understanding of teaching methodologies and popularization of science is what Dr. Kale is quite happy to do. So I'm very grateful to him that we did contact him only last week, and very readily he agreed to come, only because he's like amongst us, and it will be very nice to spare time today. Dr. Kale, sir.
नमस्कार. मला ही परिस्थिती थोडीशी आवडली नाही आहे की माझे प्रेक्षक थोडे अंधारात बसले आहेत. माझ्या डोळ्यावर थोडा जास्त प्रकाश येतोय, पण मला वाटतं that is mainly because they want to record this for sharing in different media, and this is the requirement of that. But otherwise, I'm basically a teacher. हाडापर्यंत मुरलेला आहे शिक्षकी पेशा, आणि त्यामुळे मला माझ्या तरुण मित्रांबरोबर जास्तीत जास्त गोष्टी शेअर करायला आवडतात, आणि त्यांच्या प्रतिक्रिया मला टिपता येणं मला वाटतं जास्त आवश्यक असतं. आपण थोडे अंधारात असल्यामुळे ते कमी होईल, परंतु माझी तुम्हाला पूर्ण परवानगी आहे की कुठल्याही स्टेजला तुम्ही मला थांबवून प्रश्न विचारू शकता. हे फार छान झालं, मी थोडा स्वतंत्र झालो. तिथे एका ठिकाणी अडकून पडण्यापेक्षा मला हे आवडेल, इकडून तिकडे जाणं. हाऊ इज इट गोइंग टू बी? माझं बोलणं हे व्यवस्थित ते बघ, टेक्निकली आय डोंट नो. Okay. Friends, at the onset, I sincerely apologize to you all, and you all, not the seniors. And the reason is that probably our generations did not take environment as seriously as sir has already stated earlier. And unfortunately the burden has been transferred onto your shoulders. आम्ही घाण केलेली आहे, स्वच्छता तुम्ही करायची. Don't take it literally, but unfortunately the situation has gone to that extent. Sometimes when I look at even younger people, माझी नातवंड, it really pains me because I do not know whether they are going to survive to become as old as I am now. And the only reason is that we have almost reached a point of no return. And probably it is only the downward journey. It's not that just the most intelligent species of man, Homo sapiens, sapiens means intelligent. We call ourselves doubly intelligent species. And I do not remember a single deed that can be classified as intelligence. Because right from probably the evolution of our species, what we have been doing is we have been conquering the nature. We have been conquering the plant animal life, and we take pride in defeating them all. Unfortunately, the situation has worsened to the extent that we say that a mass extinction, the 6th mass extinction, this has happened even earlier 5 times, But sixth mass extinction is only because of man. Well, we are going to do, but we are taking along with us a large number of plant and animal species. And it is quite likely that in your lifetime you may be able to witness it. If not you, I'm sure that your young ones are definitely going to be a part of it. So beware. We did not do justice to you all, but I expect you to do some justice to your forthcoming generations by probably cleaning up the mess that we have already created. Well, I'm sorry because this took a little time, and now let us come on to the more serious discussion on the topic at hand, which is coastal biodiversity and its correlation with economy. It's most unfortunate that today we translate everything in terms of economy. And as the topic has come up, let me just take one more minute away from the topic. And that is GDP, gross domestic production, is a measure of the economic status of a given state, of a given country in the world, and so on. Unfortunately, however, if Maharashtra produces something which is sold to Kerala, and in return we purchase something from Kerala, both the things get added and the GDP swells. Whereas what has happened is only money from this pocket has been put into this pocket. That's all. And nobody looks at the degradation of natural resources. I don't know, you also must have heard a very common term which is spoken of right from maybe primary schools to ministries, and that is sustainable development. Well, in my strictest opinion, if there is development, there is always a degradation of natural resources. You cannot construct, for example, an auditorium like this without utilizing natural resources. You will say, yes, the college has developed. It did not have earlier an auditorium, now it has had it. So you will say college has developed. Yes, but at the cost of natural resources which have been degraded. So please try and understand me. Instead of GDP now, probably some new term is needed to be regularized in the entire world economic scenario, and that would be related to natural resources. How rich is the natural wealth in a country? Somewhere that has to be related to the economic position. And probably if that's really done, maybe India would be among one of the developed countries. Unfortunately, however, today we are trying to follow the West in increasing our GDP in the form of per capita income. And recently I've had a post on social media where I discovered that in 1950, what was the status of GDP is being reached now. In 2018, we reached that status. That means in the meantime, we had a decline and then gradually an increase, and now we are at par with the position that was there in 1950. Probably if the graph continues to rise, we may reach a better position. But otherwise, in all these years, what have we achieved? Oh, not much. But probably a status quo is being reached. Well, many reasons, among them are ignorance is a major reason. So let's see how it is. Go to the next slide, please. Yeah, thank you. This is a map of mainly the oceans. I'm sorry, I'll have to stand here. Anyway, well, you have heard about the phrase सात समुंदर पार. ये सात समुंदर क्या है? These are the oceans. But the oceans are not numbered 7 as such. But for the fact that Pacific Ocean and Atlantic Ocean are so huge that they are divided into north and south. So we have major oceans, as you can see in the middle belt: North Pacific Ocean, North Atlantic Ocean, North Pacific because it is a sphere, you can see again on the right, South Pacific, South Atlantic, Indian Ocean. Then surrounding the poles would be the Arctic and Antarctic. Antarctic is also known as Southern Ocean. So these are the 7 oceans then. You have also heard the term sea. What is the difference between oceans and seas? Normally, no distinction is made. But technically speaking, scientifically speaking, yes. Oceans are more spread. They are vast areas of Earth's surface covered by water, salt water, marine water. Seas are normally smaller sections which are bordered by the continents. Well, we normally say lagoon is something like that. It's a still smaller unit. Maybe a sandbar, एक उमरा तयार झालेला आहे आपण म्हणूया पाण्यामध्येच, which has separated a small body of sea where the physical forces have been modified, and that part is then called as lagoon. So here sea can be related to something called as bay, B-A-Y, an indentation connected to ocean necessarily, but may be bordered by land. So you can see there small areas. Pointer वगैरह क्या है का? Pointer. Okay, doesn't matter. I could go there, but I don't know. Can you see there? A Caspian Sea is shown, Mediterranean Sea is shown, Black Sea is shown. I do not know how clear it is to the people sitting far, but these are seas because they are encircled almost entirely by land. They have connection with the oceans, but they are otherwise isolated by land. Well, bay is also like that, an indentation which has a free access to oceans. So these are different terms that probably we might refer to in our further discussions. Go ahead, next slide. Yeah. The oceans in general, oceans and seas, cover almost 71% of the surface of Earth. But that is not all. Sea is more deep as well. Oceans are very deep. The maximum depth noticed is at Mariana Trench, which is almost 11 kilometers, much greater than probably the tallest peak in Himalaya, Everest. Much deeper than that. So 97% of the world's water reserve is in oceans. Not just that again, but it provides a lot of habitats. Habitat is a place where the biota, where living things get established. We have two major habitats. The land sinking gradually toward the bottom of the ocean is called as benthic, and the waters above, the water column, is known as pelagic environment. Well, right from the landward side, if you observe, there would be, an intertidal zone. Highest high tide. High tide and low tide occurs twice every day. But there are occasions wherein the ज्वार भाटा जिसको कहते हैं, आप you're aware of it. But once in a fortnight, the water goes to greatest height on towards the land and recedes also to a maximum extent. So that's called a spring tide. And exactly in between, 8th day probably is supposed to be the neap tide, N-E-A-P. Neap tide is when the oscillations are minimum. High tide doesn't rise very high and low tide doesn't recede very low. So that area is supposed to be, in common English literature, called beach. Try and understand. When you say coastline, it is not only the beach, but it would be a considerably wide patch which is relatively low-lying, closer to the sea level. Of course, the topography need not be such that everywhere it would be at sea level, but a belt which is lining the coast, lining the intertidal region, we can in general say, can be referred to as a coastline. Well, we'll come to that slightly later again. But at present, let me tell you this, that intertidal region, immediately underneath that, more towards the bottom line, is there the sublittoral region. There is also a splash region, which is more towards the beach, wherein, the salt sprays are received. Water never rises to that height. So this entire region is called a littoral region. From supralittoral, eulittoral, sublittoral, the entire region is called as a littoral region. And you will find, based on the substratum, which may be rocks, sand or mud, we have rocky, sandy or muddy beaches. Try and understand. Each one has its peculiarities. Each one has specific physical, chemical characters, and therefore would support different mix of living organisms. Nevertheless, that is supposed to be the eulittoral region. Below that is a gradual slope of the land going into the sea. We normally refer to as continental shelf. Try and understand. Continental shelf. What is it? You cannot see it normally. It is up to a depth of about 200 meters. A gradual sloping land into the sea. Then is there the continental slope. It is more steep. That's called continental slope. And then is the bottom line. The bottom line is never smooth. But there are ups and downs in that. There are mountain ranges bigger than Himalayan and Sahyadris and other mountain ranges you are aware of. Bigger than these ranges are there in the bottom of the sea. So there are trenches like valleys. There are trenches which go quite deep. As I said, Mariana is up to 11 kilometers. But by and large, the average depth is somewhere around 3,500 meters, 3.5 kilometers. But again, normally our transport lines, whether it is the sea transport or the air transport, is always along the borders of the continents. And you will find that this entire area is economically therefore more significant. Try and understand. Well, most of the bottom line is like a desert. Scanty life can be seen there. Most of the life is confined to the neritic region, we call it. Neritic includes the bottom line as well as the water column above it up to continental shelf, up to the edge of continental shelf. So that area is known as the Neritic region. World's most productive region it is. The Badil and abyssal regions, at times Haddle region where there would be deep trench. These are, as I said, relatively with sparser life. Same thing goes for the pelagic zone. Epipelagic zone has an upper area which is called as photic zone because light can penetrate freely. If it is the clearest water, let's say in the open ocean, then light can penetrate freely up to about 100 meters. 100 meters, imagine. But of course, shoreward, there will be many suspended particles and the depth is significantly less. But that in general is referred to the photic zone. Then there is a twilight zone. Photic zone is the area where most of the plants, green organisms lie. So we call it the productive belt, green belt. Down below there are only consumers, animals, and that is known as brown belt. So in between is this compensation zone where productivity, we call it, we designate it by the letter P, and respiration we indicate by R. Community production and community respiration equals one another. Okay, so that is the twilight zone. So epipelagic is the region where maximum of life is found. Mesopelagic is below that, in line with the Badil region is the Badipelagic zone. Below that is the Abyssopelagic zone. Abyss is supposed to be depth. So at greater depth is there the Abyssopelagic, and finally is there the Hadopelagic zone in the Haddle region. Next slide, please. Yeah. So this was a brief idea that you should have about the habitats. Now let us come to different phenomena that affect the production and therefore economy. You know very well that because the oceans are connected, there is a continuous flow of water. Yet, however, the temperatures vary from pole towards the equator. Correct? And as you must have learned earlier, I know there will be a mix of arts, commerce, science students here. But in general, till your 12th standard or so, you all have learned, or 10th standard, you all have learned certain facts. And what have they been? That there are convection, conduction, these are the ways heat can proceed, transfer. In water it is convection. In solids it is conduction. So please try and understand me, there are convection currents. So at equator the temperature of surface water rises, at poles it is low, and therefore there is a continuous movement of cold water which will sink, will go towards the depth and will rise towards the equator, and from the equator there will be a continuous flow towards the poles. In both northern and southern hemispheres this will continue. Also, the winds blow all the time from oceans towards land. Again, you must be knowing this, that the solid surfaces get heated faster by absorbing sunlight, whereas water with high specific heat will not warm that much, and therefore air in contact with that will not get warmer. So continually the air in contact with the land is rising up, and its place is being taken by the winds flowing from oceans. And this force of wind will move the surface waters. Naturally, you expect it to be moving in the direction of the wind, but this doesn't happen so. Why? Because the earth is spinning around itself. And the momentum is caught by the fluid. The state is fluid. And therefore, you will find that at right angles, the water currents would be set. Left in the northern hemisphere, right in the southern hemisphere. So Coriolis force is the force because of spinning of the earth, and Ekman transport is what causes the direction of the currents to be at an angle to air movement. Well, you can see because of resistance by the continents, there is further modification. And what can be termed as gyres, Gyres, are getting established. You can see here the gyres, major gyres that are there in the oceans can be seen here. Next slide, please. Next. Yeah. I didn't read out the slide entirely because now what I have to discuss with you is economic aspect related to all this. So please try and understand the global as well as local productivity is influenced by two major factors. Number one is availability of sunlight, because that is what causes the energy to be utilized and stored in the form of chemical bond energy of food. Second factor, one is light. Second factor would be nutrients, materials. So energy and materials, these are the two things needed. So materials here are actually the nutritive elements which are needed for the plants to fix sunlight in the form of food. And naturally, as more food is generated, more animals would be consuming it and the productivity would be high. So because of the movements of water, all the time the bottom water is going up, but at the borders of the continents, the slope would turn the direction, waters will start coming up. And this brings the nutrients from the bottom to the surface. We call it upwelling. Also, there is a phenomenon not mentioned here, but let me tell you, it is outwelling. What is outwelling? That rivers and runoff would bring the dissolved minerals from land into the sea. So the coastal waters would be rich in nutrients because of both upwelling as well as outwelling. Now, based on differences in the temperature, the productivity is slightly different. Like for example, Atlantic is cold ocean, productivity is low. Pacific is a warmer ocean, productivity is high. Indian Ocean likewise, productivity is high, but there are places where it is low, very low, and very high too. So there it fluctuates a little more. Atlantic, by and large, uniformly less productive. Pacific, by and large, uniformly more productive. Indian Ocean, average, but going more towards productive side. Whereas the Arctic and Antarctic oceans, because of cold, they are very less productive. Of course, please try and understand, sunlight can pierce through the ice sheet, and therefore you might have learnt in your geography lessons that Eskimos, they dig a hole in the ice cap and can fish. Try and understand this. So yes, the production is even there towards the poles, but it is much lesser as compared to the equatorial region. So high productivity is in general found ocean-wise, we have already seen, but it is always more in the neritic zone compared to the oceanic zone. And as I said already, the nutrient cycles, the nutrients from runoff, high levels near the coastline, just off the coastline, all are the factors that add to the productivity. So neritic zone, which actually constitutes only 15% of the total area of oceans, has almost 50% of the production in it. And that is the reason why fisheries are always along the coastline. Of course, there are, trawls that go in the open ocean and trawl it, but we'll refer to it slightly later, not right now. Well, inshore tropical waters, they have a productivity which is almost 10 times the productivity that is seen in the open oceans. Over to the next slide, please. Yeah, I've already talked to you about the upwelling phenomenon. There are more details. I don't think we shall have time enough to go through every sentence there. You try and read, but otherwise not so significant. There are types of upwelling. The first type is a coastal upwelling. I have told you already that whether they are surface currents or deep currents, they are all moving from open oceans towards the coastline. And the border of the coastline would deflect these currents so that the water will tend to come towards the surface. So the nutrients from the bottom are brought to the surface. Next slide, please. The example is mentioned there about the Peru coast. Next slide. Okay. This is a picturization of it. You can see the blue arrow, which is, deep currents, which are being deflected by the gradual sloping bottom line. And wind direction at right angles to that is shown there more clearly. Right angles to that would be there the flow of waters. So there will be upwelling because of this multitude of currents which are established there. Next. Equatorial upwelling, this also I have spoken to you about. Warming of the water and cold waters towards the poles. There will be convection currents established. तुमच्या चहाच्या भांड्यामध्ये पण तसंच होतं बघा. बॉटमला पाणी गरम होतं, वरती येतं, ते साईडकडे जातं, पुन्हा उकळी येण्याच्या पूर्वी बघा तुम्ही बबल्स, एक्झॅक्टली दॅट मूवमेंट कॅन बी सीन. Anyway, so that is that equatorial upwelling sort of. Next slide. Then island mass effect. Island is surrounded by the ocean on all sides. So there would be the gyres developed more commonly in the island regions. Next slide. Well, now let us come more specifically to India. We'll have a map to go by, but before that there are a few general features shown here. About the length is the last point. 6,100 kilometers of the continental coast. And there are a few islands which come under, we can say, Indian political border. And another 1,197 kilometers of the coastline of that will make a total of 7,516.6 kilometers. This is the coastline. The history is mentioned there that there was a huge mass of land once upon a time, Gondwan. Those of you who have learned biology, they must be knowing about the geological time scale. So, Paleozoic era, till up to about 550 million years ago was the Paleozoic era. Towards the end of that Paleozoic era was supposed to be a continental drift. Well, you can imagine that to be something like, the cream that comes up on the surface of boiled milk. Exactly like that, there is a molten magma, and on that there is a surface layer of geological plates. And because there is a liquid below, and because of the spinning of the earth, the Gondwana land broke and the pieces started moving away from one another. Most of the land was concentrated towards the northern hemisphere. When Gondwana land broke and pieces started moving more to the south, gradually the map of today's world started emerging. So that has been mentioned here. There is a very nice film on YouTube of this continental drift. So what has happened in a huge span of crores of years has been fitted into a 45 seconds film. Go through that. Nice, very nice film it is. Next slide. Yeah. We call it peninsula. Our country is peninsula. What is peninsula? On three sides surrounded by ocean. One side it is connected to land. Peninsula region starts from Kutch. On the left you can see Kutch. This is supposed to be the western side, this is supposed to be the eastern side. This is northern, this is southern side. Okay, I've given you a general idea. So, more to the north on the west would be their Kutch, below that Kathiawad area. Then there is a Gujarat plain. Gujarat plain is, away from the cusp, more towards the mainland. Then there is a Konkan coast spread Oh. Great, yeah. Right. So, yes, you can see now Kutch, Kathiawad, Gujarat plain. Below that is the Konkan coast, a huge one, covering 3 states almost. Then is there the Malabar coast, which is only for Kerala state. Then there is the Cape Comorin, Kanyakumari, Cape Comorin, and then the eastern side. You can see the Coromandel coast, which again is covering 2 states. Then is there the northern Sarkas, again 2 states it covers, and Utkal plain, which covers Orissa and West Bengal. Well, there are certain peculiar characters. We have slides ahead of this, but doesn't matter. With this diagram I will explain, and that should, I think, be enough. See, on the west side you can see, of course, this is the cut portion. Try and understand me. And therefore, unfortunately, it has been so that big natural ports are very few in India. There are some indents, but they are only small ports. So on the west side, except probably for Kutch Kathiawad region and the connection between the Kathiawad and Gujarat plain, there are some good indents. Aap samajh rahe ho? So some good ports, natural ports. But otherwise, all along the western coastline, you do not see good ports, big ports. However, this has been compensated by another wealth, and that is the continental shelf. The breadth of it is more along the west side. Continental shelf, you remember, gradual slope of the land into the ocean. That is much broader here. But once again, the negative aspect is that the coastline is very narrow. What is the coastline? I have told you already. There is a, not shown in the picture, but I think Abhijit can show you. There is a western ghat which runs almost parallel to the west coast. And therefore from that mountain range to probably the waters, it's a narrow belt. So coastline as such is relatively narrow along the west. See, try and put this in the brain properly. This we will refer to a number of times now. So fisheries are very productive along the west coast. Why? Because the upwelling phenomenon is more remarkable. However, on the land, coastline being narrow, the production is less. Understanding that, see, one thing is being compensated by other. East coast, comparatively, the coastline is broader. Coastline is broader. But unfortunately, again, the continental shelf is narrow. Shelf is narrow. And therefore, upwelling is less. Nutrient availability is less. And therefore, fishery-wise, East coast is not very rich. Except probably for the Utkal Plain region, where probably both the coastal line as well as the continental shelf is quite broad. You know, the best example of that would be shared between India and Bangladesh, which is a huge deltoid region. You understand me? It's very productive. Both fisheries as well as granary. All right, for both of these, it is very rich. Well, anyway, so that is a general, we can say, description of western and the eastern coastline. Go to the next slide, please. So same thing is now discussed in the arrows. Yeah, okay. So eastern coast is being discussed here first. The very first point says that the productivity is relatively low. Then there is a West Bengal region, the limits mentioned. Mahanadi, Krishna, Godavari, Kaveri are the rivers. I've told you, coastal plain therefore is much productive. Agriculture, horticulture will go, very nicely along the east coast. So agriculture thrives along the deltas as well. So very fertile regions. So for example, Krishna Delta is the granary of the South India. Next slide. Utkal coast. This also is very, very productive. It's between Chilka Lake and Kolleru Lake. Forget about that. Rice, coconut, bananas are the major products there. Andhra coast. It is between Kolleru Lake and Pulikat Lake. Relatively rough sea. Continental shelf is narrow, first place, plus topography is odd, and therefore, fishing boats operate with difficulty there. Naturally, productivity much less, fisheries production much less. Next slide. Coromandel coast is relatively better. The outstanding thing about it is that monsoon is in winter. Normally in India, monsoon is a part of summer. But here it is mainly winter. So go to the next slide, please. Yeah. Western coastal plains. Once again, the first point tells you about the narrow coastline but broad shelf, and therefore better upwelling, better fisheries conditions. And then the regions continue. The best region would be Kerala region. Why so? Because it's very low lying, sea level. There are many basins, so backwaters are plenty, lagoons are plenty. And therefore, scenic beauty is excellent. Kerala therefore attracts maximum tourism, coastal tourism. Try and understand. So, that's what it is. Next slide we can go to. Kutch, Kathiawad. I've taken my students frequently to Gujarat. There are two reasons. Number one is that fisheries are very great there because of the fertile waters. I've seen certain shellfishes. What is the costliest dish if you go to a hotel and order seafood? What is the costliest dish? It's a shellfish. No, shellfish. Shellfish is arthropod. Lobsters. I have seen this huge lobster, about 3 feet long, excluding the antenna. Huge octopi, huge mussels, huge crabs and lobsters. All these are seen along the Gujarat coast. And the wonderful thing is that there are maximum vegetarians among Gujaratis. So we purchase it. Maharashtra and all other states, of course. So there are maximum, cold houses and companies which freeze and pack and tin and dry fish and so sell them in different markets, national as well as international. So that's the beauty of Kutch and Gujarat region. I do not know whether you have visited, if you have visited, banned for general public today. But there is a marine national park which involves islands. I had been to one of these islands which is absolutely rich in biodiversity. I do not know, I may exceed the time limit a little, but there are memories that are, refreshed when I speak about it all. The carpet anemones, almost 3 feet long and up to 2 feet wide, I have seen there. Anemone is supposed to be a sedentary organism. Sedentary. There are, of course, coral reefs, which too are sedentary organisms. Life it is, animals they are, but sedentary, attached to one place. Anyway, I'll refer to it once again sometime later. Warsaw I used to go when I was a student. Abhijit sir has been my student from Junjunwala College. And Junjunwala, I had my teachers, excellent teachers, and learning biology was great in the department, mainly because there would be outings, n number of outings in a year. And we used to come very often to Warsaw Beach, Sat Bangla area, where there is a fisheries institute. And believe me, you go to knee-deep water, put your hand blindly in water, and there would be a sea fan, gorgonid, available. And these would be with various colors, would be pink and yellow and greenish and grayish and whatnot. We used to fancy them, and back then I would collect them, would take home. Later on I realized that this was a bad thing to do. I apologized to you much earlier. I didn't realize that I was destroying the system there. Another bad thing was taking them home, taking the shells home, gorgonids home. Next day it would start smelling so bad that mother will collect all that and throw it in the trash. There is an excellent seaside collection at Poshitra. Can you go back to the map? Map of India. No, map of India. Much later. Later. Yeah, this way. Okha is supposed to be the tip there. Lower cusp, tip, yeah, that is Okha. Tip. Yes. Tip, lower one. Lower cusp, yeah. Then it is Okha. Dwarka, Bet Dwarka is close to that. But if you go deep in it, that place is Poshitra. Once again, common people banned. But as a researcher, I could go. Last few students of mine, they worked on marine ecosystems. And we had special permission from MOEF. So we could visit it. Organ pipe coral. Those who have learned biology, they might have seen a specimen in the college. Some tubes attached to one another at different places. That's only the shell, the skeleton of it. The organism inside, as it sways in water, would emit light, bioluminescence. And such a great sight, you would not like to move away from it, but you have to, because you have to go there in low tide, and high tide, if you are caught there, it's a one-way ticket. Because very rough sea it is, very, very rough sea. Anyway, I just wanted to tell you about this location, geographical location of the Kutch region. So, yes. So, Kutch, Kathiawad, they are very fertile coasts. So is actually the Gujarat coast, which is a narrow region. Then comes Konkan coast. Konkan coast goes all across Maharashtra, Goa, and a part of Karnataka. You understand me? It is fairly fertile region, good fisheries, so that Rampan is operated. Rampan is supposed to be a huge net, kilometers together long, and that would be paid out by a number of boats, and the net would be towed, the bottom line first, so that it becomes like a dish, and then the headline is pulled, so that fish caught in that bowl are being taken towards the coast, and it is never lifted. When the fish are encircled in a narrow area, people will go with the wicker baskets and would simply collect the basketfuls and come onto the coast. Tons together in one catch, tons of fish. Try and understand me. So, very rich fisheries are there along the Konkan coast as well. Next slide. Karnataka coast also is relatively rich. Again, near Bangalore, we have broadest of the coastline there. And of course, there are a number of small and large rivers and streams which run a short distance from Western Ghat to the ocean. So, there is no chance of, picking up much of the alluvium. Alluvium is supposed to be tiny particles which would settle by the wind, by the water currents. So there is no chance of collecting alluvium and depositing it, and therefore, unfortunately, the agriculture will not flourish more. Konkan coast is mainly rice producing region, because paddy is the only grain which will withstand salinity. And therefore, in this narrow coastal region, one agricultural crop that is most common is rice. Well, anyway, so it continues along the Karnataka coast as well. Go to the next slide, please. Yeah, Kerala coast. I have already talked to you about the tourism haven. because of again lagoons and backwaters. Rich fishing, very rich fishing is there. All right. Plus, in addition to that, the betel nuts, coconuts, betel leaves, black pepper. There are so many cash crops that are being taken there, and therefore one of the richest regions would be Kerala in the entire coastal region. Next slide. Okay, by and large, the general significances are being mentioned here, that coastal plains are a home to diverse range of habitats and therefore a diverse range of, commercially important organisms, fisheries. In addition to that, there is tourism potential to it. The water sports can flourish more along the western coast, less along the eastern coast. The southwest monsoon, which actually takes clouds from Indian Ocean, would feed the water for agriculture there. There are large or tiny ports all along the western line. And one important thing going away a little would be sand. In Kerala, there is monazite. The sand is monazite sand, which is a rich source of thorium. Thorium is a radionuclide. It can be used in fission production of electricity. So, this is the significance of that again. Next slide. It runs into the fisheries again. World's 7.56% of fishing is done in India. So one of the top countries in fisheries production. And this adds to the GVA, is supposed to be the gross value added. It's an economics term, but that is contributed by the coastline. Please try and understand me. Both fishery wise as well as agriculture wise. Next slide. Yeah. Taken from internet, you can very easily get it. This is a composite picture of, ecological integrity. What are the different factors that make marine ecosystem much stable as compared to the terrestrial ecosystems. In the middle is a list of services, ecosystem services. That means the benefits that we get from the ocean ecosystems. And on the right, mainly would be the sources of income, livelihoods to human beings. So all this can be seen here. You can just have a look, don't read. So many different professions are available only because there are marine ecosystems available. Go on to the next slide. Yeah. So we have seen so far the benefits. Unfortunately, however, we have never realized the true value of oceans. And therefore, we have, through our activities, produced a number of threats to the ocean ecosystems. The first and the foremost comes dumping. जे तुमच्या डोळ्यासमोर नाही ना, तुम्हाला वाटतं की ते इट डजंट एक्झिस्ट. पण तो मांजर डोळे मिटून दूध पिते. तिला वाटतं कोणी बघत नाही कारण तिचे डोळे मिटलेले आहेत. But the entire humanity has been doing the very same thing. Throw something out in the moving water systems, so it will be taken away from your eyes. And all rivers, all streams would ultimately go into the ocean, empty into the ocean. And naturally, therefore, the ocean receives all our dumps. There are point sources. Point sources are supposed to be, a pipeline taking the wastewater into the ocean. I do not know, but if you slightly remember, I have been a part of EIA project. With IIT, I have done several of them. And I did the EIA study at Jawaharlal Nehru Port. I also have done regular, every year, surveys along the Thane Creek. And what I experienced is that the industries nearby, even for that matter, most unfortunate thing it is, that the treatment plants, they release their waste directly to the pipeline, and if people can see the flow into the ocean. So what they do is, they would take it almost 1.5 kilometers into the ocean and leave everything there. So what all things we dump? Great number I have a slide showing that ahead. Runoff from our agriculture. I've told you that coastline is relatively rich even in agriculture. Unfortunately, the so-called green revolution has brought more problems. Why? Because it was based on the use of fertilizers, and that too synthetic ones. And these synthetic fertilizers and pesticides, these two things are bad. That once you start using them, the soil becomes dependent on it, and gradually greater and greater dosage would be needed. Are you understanding this? And when more and more doses are put there, they would leach out. And where will it go? It's a runoff. It would be ultimately received by oceans. So there is a phenomenon called eutrophication. It would be going too deep into it. I will not discuss that. But by and large, because of the fertilizers and pesticides, we have actually poisoned our oceans. Similarly, from domestic sector. Don't have ideas that India is a backward country and therefore we are putting all our waste directly into the ocean. Nowhere in the world, except for primary treatment, which is filtration, further treatments are commercially done. Experimentally, yes, many places, but commercially, no. On mass scale, no. No further treatments. And therefore, the sea is being poisoned by our waste waters. Plastics. It is not just waste waters that would go into the ocean, but everything that we want to discard ultimately finds its way into the oceans. And one of the greatest, largest threat is due to plastics. We'll come to it slightly later again. Then there is dredging. There is siltation, gaal satto. And that is particularly in the port region. The channels have to be freed of this, and therefore periodically they dredge out the material. And unfortunately they will dump it somewhere in the deeper region, that's all. तिकडनं काढला आणि थोडा लांब जाऊन टाकला. Unfortunately, that is a major threat to the bottom dwelling organisms. Oil spills. The entire world today is, economies of these countries is being driven by the oil. Fuels. Try and understand me. And therefore, the oil producing countries, not every country is blessed with enough oil resources. Some countries have much greater reserves than others, and naturally therefore through the pipelines and through the huge tankers, it is being transported from one country to another. The leakages of the pipelines, the accidents of the ships, and simple tiny leakages from shipping operations, they make the oil accumulate. Because of the surface tension of the water, a tiniest drop also would tend to spread along the surface. पावसाळा आहे, तुम्ही खड्डे बघता रस्त्यामधले, त्या खड्ड्यांवरती तेलाचा तवंग दिसतो आपल्याला, इरिडिसेंट, इंद्रधनुष्य दिसतं तुम्हाला पाण्यात. अरे इतकं ऑइल कुठून आलं असं तुम्ही म्हणाल. ते ॲक्च्युली ऑइल खूप जास्त नसतं. इवन अ ड्रॉप वुड इमिडिएटली स्प्रेड अलॉंग अ ह्यूज एरिया. ट्राय अँड अंडरस्टँड मी. अँड देअरफॉर ऑइल स्पिल्स पोज अ व्हेरी सिरियस थ्रेट टू द लिव्हिंग ऑर्गॅनिझम्स इन ओशन्स. रेक्लमेशन्स, आपल्याला कॉन्टिनेंटची जागा पुरत नाही आहे. वुड डम्प द मटेरियल सॉलिड वेस्ट अँड would claim land from there. So that's another threat. And finally, overfishing. We aren't satisfied with what naturally can be caught. We want more and more and yet more, and that creates problems. Next slide. Anything that is put solid waste into the ocean, particularly with lesser densities, will float. And as it floats, and we have seen the earlier picture of gyres, so it will keep circulating. However, there are going to be places where the things would accumulate because of the centripetal forces. And therefore, the Great Pacific Garbage Patch has been created, which is as huge as 1.6 million square kilometers, 3 times the area of France, almost half the area of India. That big it is, that huge it is. Next slide. This is a picture. It is not an island. It is actually spread out all along the coast. Okay, can go to the next slide. Well, surface plastics of the total world and different oceans has been shown up above. So Indian Ocean is in the 3rd position there. And country-wise is shown here. India is somewhere 6th, I think, no, 8th, maybe. Much behind many other countries in causing this pollution. Next slide, please. Go to the next slide, yeah. Many pictures like that very often appear in the social media. You can see it on the internet. काय दिसतं तुम्हाला फोटोमध्ये? कुठला प्राणी आहे? व्हेल. करेक्ट, व्हेल. Baleen whale specifically would filter the water for acquiring food. Because of continuous friction, probably the baleen plates have been broken and there is so much tons of plastic that is found in the gut. Next slide. There are many like that, many pictures. So this is a trash, this only statistics. You can see the second last point, more than 5 trillion plastic pieces weighing over 250,000 tons float in the sea. Well, in Asian region, this is about Indian Ocean only. This is about Indian Ocean only. And the topmost country that pollutes is Philippines, which accounts for 36.4%, whereas India contributes only about 13% trash. Next slide. Yeah. Plastic doesn't degrade easily. It's a non-degradable material. So chemically, it's understandable that the bonds will not break easily, but physically, yes, it gets dissected. प्लास्टिक विषय फाटते, फाटून आणखीन तुकडे होतात त्याचे, आणखीन तुकडे होतात, आणखीन तुकडे होतात. का? Because of the water currents. Till ultimately it becomes very minute, microscopic. We call it microplastic. Several surveys have shown that there is plenty of microplastic in all oceans. There has been plastic retrieved from even Marina Trench, 11 kilometers depth. There has been plastic there. So this plastic finally gets dissected, microplastic. It's incorporated by the plants, then by the herbivores, then by the carnivores, and ultimately it comes to us. It's called as food chain magnification. We receive a dosage which is much higher, and this is causing, cancer in humans. In just Thane Creek, Thane ji Khadi, BRC had found 20 years back so much of mercury, several times the tolerable range for human beings. Fortunately, however, before we could get large dosage of it, it killed all living beings there. And therefore, we don't receive the high dosage of these heavy metals anymore. But unfortunate part is that the system is dead. The crab fishery, which was once flourishing there, आता औषधाला पण क्रॅब मिळत नाही तिथे. Try and understand. Well, almost every place, this again gives you just a statistics. Wherever you see there will be plastic. Go to the next slide, please. Yeah. A research carried out in 2017 reported these categories A to F. And what all things are there in it, you can quickly have a look. Nylon, high density plastic ropes, fishing nets, long lines is A category. B category is other plastics. C category would be synthetic plastic, which is plausible, and it's in the form of slippers, footwears other than leather ones. Then there are 4 glass bottles, electric bulbs, CFL bulbs, then e-waste, TV, computer hardware, mobile phone, so many, the parts of so many different gadgets. Thermocol, polyurethane foam, PUF foam, insulation of air conditioners, fridge, styrofoam, and so on. The list is unending. In Thane Creek, we have seen everything from probably the sleeping mattress, gadya, usha, मुलांच्या बॅग्स. आमच्या वेळी 10 वर्षी एकच बॅग वापरलेली आहे. आता दरवर्षी नवीन बॅग पाहिजे. आधीचं काय करायचं, कचऱ्यात टाकायचं. कचरा कुठे जातो? अल्टिमेटली इट फाइंड्स इट्स वे इन द वॉटर बॉडी. चप्पल, मला 10वी पर्यंत चप्पल नाही वापरल्यावर कधी. 11वीला पहिल्यांदा चप्पल आणली, 3 वेळा आणली, लगेच हरवायची. 1 आठवड्यात हरवायची, कारण सवयच नाही ना घालायची. माझ्या नातवाकडे आता 8 जोड आहेत आणि इज फास्ट ग्रोईंग. काय करायचं? पुट इट इन द ट्रॅश. अल्टिमेटली फाइंडिंग इट्स वे इन द ओशन. Anything and everything ultimately finds way into the ocean. These are, the pictures of Mumbai, not just Maharashtra, Mumbai. In Hindustan Times 2016, about 100 tons of trash was seen dumped on the beaches. तुम्ही स्वतः बघू शकता किती दयनीय अवस्था आहे तिथे. Next slide. In 17, 80,000 kilograms of plastic was dumped by Oki cyclone on the Mumbai coasts. Next slide. In 18, scoopwhoop.com has published the data that about 62,000 kilograms of trash was dumped on the beaches by Arabian Sea. Arabian Sea and Bay of Bengal. Arabian Sea is on the left, west coast. On the right is there the Bay of Bengal, and Cape Comorin ahead is the Indian Ocean. So not just that we are surrounded by sea all along, but there are 3 types there. Anyway, all right. Every monsoon, at high tide, people go to marine lines, the Queen's necklace to enjoy the splashes. But along with those splashed water, a lot of trash comes in. Tons together. And BMC officials have reported, if you go onto the net, there are even interviews of people who clean up things. And untiring event it becomes, you clean it once, in another hour, almost same amount of trash once again is seen there. So what you throw into the ocean comes back to you. Well, CPCB, which is Central Pollution Control Board, it has come up with a regulation, Plastic Garbage Rule 2016 it is called. And according to that, one-time use plastic is actually banned. Now, our PM has endorsed it once again and says that it would be very strictly implemented from now on. See, when it is available in the market, you tend to use it. You tend to use it. But if the manufacturing itself is stopped, I believe there will not be any trash of one-time use plastic. So, just for statistics, I don't think we should go deeper into it. Next slide. All right. This concept, blue economy, and the part of this concept has been the G20 resolution to act to solve this problem. And as has been stated earlier, all ministries now are having a joint effort towards cleaning the coastline. Well, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations has reported this, that $2.1 billion per year is the cost of cleanup. Try and understand me. It's a huge setback. Well, the estimate has been based on only 3 industries: shipping industry, fisheries and aquaculture, and marine tourism. Whereas there are many other projects that are run by man which also suffer from a setback. Well, so to add to this would be the social cost. Social cost is, by consuming the microplastic, other contaminants, you fall sick, you go to hospital, so there is a expenditure on the subsidies given to the hospitals and the pharmaceuticals, and so that added, the amount becomes huge. Next slide. Yeah. Okay. So what can be done? Eco-friendly products should be designed. I don't know, in my lifetime I have seen this transition. मला आठवते आई पिटाळ्याची बाजारामध्ये मला किटली घेऊन जायची, त्याच्यामध्ये ऑइल आणायचं, किटली घेऊन जायची, त्याच्यामध्ये दूध आणायचं. वी नेवर यूज टू हॅव प्लास्टिक रॅप्ड थिंग्स. ग्रॉसरकडे गेलो, कागदामध्ये बांधून द्यायचा, फार तर फार कागदाच्या पिशव्या. Nothing more than that. I have seen that transition myself, where there was no plastic to plenty of plastic. Today, you cannot imagine anything that you purchase comes in plastic wrapping. Everything. टूथपेस्टच्या पेस्ट फेकतो, पण बाकी औषधांच्या गोळ्या खरेदी करतो, त्याच्यामध्ये प्लास्टिक आहे भरपूर सारं. You imagine any consumable, there will be plastic somewhere. टीव्ही खरेदी केला तरी त्याच्यामध्ये रॅपिंग प्लास्टिकचं असणार काहीतरी. Try and understand. So what is necessary is to change this concept radically. Redesign almost everything, every packing industry specifically. Why plastic has become so common? Because it is very cheap. So pricing is the crucial factor. So you must find out something which is degradable, but at the same time not too costly. The technological innovations, both sides, alternative to the plastic and also degradation of the plastic. On both fronts, the research is going on. Promoting plastic-free workplace. Municipal corporations declare that the grocers, the shopkeepers, the vendors should not use plastic. They would fine heavily. 5,000 रुपये फाइन है प्लास्टिक पिशवी सापडली तर. But not just municipality, but from your side also. Like, you can work for making your college plastic free. Your housing society can become plastic free. Your ward can become plastic free. Your city can become plastic free. Your state can become plastic free. And so on it goes. Only then it will be possible. So it has to come from the grassroots level. Well, cost of garbage dump, so once again it's just a statistics. I don't think we should go over it. Oil spills. I'll only give you the nutshell. Go to the next slide, sir. Next slide, next. Yeah. See, the incidences of the shipwrecks and the oil spills have definitely been on decrease. You can see the statistics. From 1970 to 2021, the statistics have been collected here. However, unfortunately, the red line that shows the crude and other tanker trade, that is on the rise. Try and understand. This would have become too many of pictures and therefore I did not include it. But exactly, this is sorry. Things come in the mind. Gaussian curve, normal bell-shaped distribution. This is a skewed one, skewed to the left. If you see the actual amount of oil that is leaked out in the ocean, it is skewed to the right. Incidences are fewer, but unfortunately the oil that has gone into the ocean is more. Are you understanding this? Yeah. This is a picture showing a very pathetic condition of a pelican, because the oils would necessarily smear on the feathers and would make them sticky. And the birds would die, not able to fly, not able to collect food, starve to death. Next slide. Yeah. The quantities of the oil spills have been shown. Unfortunately, 1979 was the most disastrous oil spill. But even more recently, in 2018 too, we have had 113,000 tons of the oil put in the ocean. So as I've been telling you, incidences are fewer, but unfortunately the oil going into the sea is increasing. Next slide. Yeah. Cleanups, how they can be done. Next slide. Yeah, this is little about reclamation. Outstanding example is Mumbai. There have been 7 islands, and the area in between the shallow seas have been reclaimed. Not just that, but more recently, the projects like Sea Link has been through the reclamation. Try and understand. And most of these reclamations, they are faulty. They are not scientific. They are not technologically sound. Why? Because any such project should need, years of study, which hasn't been done. Secondly, you reclamate land today and tomorrow you build something on it is a wrong technique, and this has been done. The Sea Link has progressed like that only, all through. And therefore the erosion has not been taken into account, and unfortunately the erosion has shifted to the other. Try and understand. The beaches are being eaten into. Next slide. Go to the next. There have been studies. What happens is that the beaches, the lakes, the vegetated small islands, islets, hillocks, intertidal zones, mangroves, all are destroyed by dumping. I'll tell you just one incidence here. While I was doing EIA at Jawaharlal Nehru Port, second phase development, some about 150 hectare area was mangrove vegetated area was supposed to be destroyed, and therefore compensatory plantation had to be done. There will be 5-10 minutes more. I'm sorry, I understand fully well that you are not used to getting so much information so fast. It doesn't go in. Anyway, let's talk about this. So I identified an area where we started planting mangroves. It was a 5 years project, so 3 years were over, and one fine morning on my visit I saw that a lot of dredged material was dumped on the site. I immediately ran to the director of JNP, and he said, sorry, this is not in my jurisdiction, it was Navy that dumped it. Please try and understand me. Interdepartmental cooperation also is not there. So one rectification going on was destroyed, and in fact that was one of the reasons I stopped working on these EIA projects. Because what I thought was that it is only academic. Only because it is compulsory to do EIA you are doing it. Otherwise remediation you are not serious about. So what is the big point? Anyway, so this blue economy initiative that has started quite a few years back now, but the fruition is coming now. Well, Ministry of Earth Science, MOES, has drafted this blue economy initiative. Go to the next slide, sir. And these are the focal areas of it. The framework for the blue economy and ocean governance, coastal marine spatial planning and tourism, marine fisheries, aquaculture and fish processing, manufacturing, emerging industries, trade, technology, services and skill development, logistics, infrastructure and shipping, including transshipments, coastal and deep sea mining and offshore energy, security, strategic dimensions and international engagements. So almost all areas have been covered. What threats have been recognized against the ocean ecosystems are all being taken care of. And in that, participation of general public is primarily on the local basis. The local governance, municipal corporations, municipalities, gram panchayats of the places which are along the coastline, they can claim this public participation in keeping the coastline clean. Not cleaning, keeping it clean. Please find the difference properly. You take out a scheme and on one day you go to the beach and collect maybe tons of garbage at a time. And with the municipality you dispose it off properly. Is not going to be sufficient, because tomorrow if again same amount of litter is going to be there on the coastline, it is of no use. So the awareness program has to spread. In my front, if there are 200 students sitting here, each one can speak at least to 10 more, and they in turn would spread it still further till ultimately the effort becomes very well spread is the need of the time. See, for several years now, 20 odd years, we have been running Clean Creek movement for Thane Creek. Well, the very fact that we had to run it for 20 odd years spells about our failures. But I will not say it was a stark failure. Why? Because earlier we used to find plenty of objects, as I said, right from sleeping mattresses to probably pens and pencils. And that today has been resolved properly. The point, the pipes draining into the Thane Creek, they now have guards. So at least solids are being stopped from going into the oceans. And gradually the creek is healing all by itself. Please try and understand, there is amazing property of self-healing with every single ecosystem. Except that the rate at which you are stressing it, if that is reduced, automatically there will be recovery. Try and understand me. So friends, it's my appeal to you all that participate in any and every such a drive which involves cleaning of your surroundings. Swaccha Bharat has been a mission going on for quite a few years now. An extension of it would be Swaccha Kinare. And I believe you can definitely take part of it. Yeah. So I wish you success for this. And then next slide. I have spoken for too long. If any one of you here would like to share experiences or have a question, a query, you are welcome to speak.
Sir, now that you're associated with so many projects, you have been associated for last 20 years, and you are also currently associated with the Abhiyan that the government is carrying out through the Vigyan Prasar. Can you tell us how students from the college, at the college level, can work and contribute towards anything that is happening? Whether there would be volunteers that would be required, or any particular type of research-oriented basic work that is required. So you can just throw a little light on that.
This is what, in fact, we have been doing at Paryavaran Dakshata Mandal Thane. That every year we celebrate 2 days. One is the World Wetlands Day, and another is World Mangrove Day, properly with a 6 months gap. And on both the occasions, we invite the stakeholders. Please try and understand me, stakeholders. And that's what precisely I believe should be done by the students. That it isn't sufficient, as I said, to take part in the beach cleaning activity, which would be only once in a while. But on a regular basis, if they visit the villages, fishing wharfs, maybe the schools in that area, and speak to the students, to the adults, it is difficult, let me tell you this. It is very easy to say, hey kuru naka, te kuru naka. Very easy to say. And a wise person will immediately ask, काय करू नका सांगू नका, काय करा ते सांगा. So you must appropriately have alternatives. Try and understand me. So initially, at least, the students groups, NSS, NCC, maybe other groups, associations in your college, they can identify the villages where they should not go and start preaching. Absolutely not. They should do some social work there. helping out people. When the credentials are established, when they know that you come here for their good, then speak about this awareness. And awareness, oh, there are n number of subjects for this. Most important, significant would be environment, and number 2, health. Teach them what are good healthy habits, what are good healthy diets. It is most unfortunate that I see today, again this transition I have witnessed, जहाँ कॉलेज के बाहर स्टॉल्स किसी ज़माने में थोड़े अच्छे टाइप के फूड्स के होते थे, आज क्या मिलता है, वो चिल्ली, सम what do you call it, Chinese भेल, or I mean variants of that, which would be with synthetic colors, synthetic taste makers, and otherwise no dietary values. Try and understand me. So पहले आप खुद सुधर जाओ, फिर बाकी लोगों को सुधारने की कोशिश करो. भाई ये क्या खाते हो? You know, this is most unfortunate that today what you eat, what you wear, what you use is dictated by the advertisements. छोटे बच्चों को पूछा क्या खाने को अच्छा लगता है, मैगी. Whereas I have learned, I have done a 2 years course of Yoga Ayurveda with Tilak Maharashtra Vidyapit, and I have learned there that the foods that are over processed, ati parishkrut anna, over processed food is useless to the body, but it may create problems. Try and understand me. And Maggi is one outstanding example of it. मैदा, त्यातून ते आधी शिजवणार, मग ते मोल्ड करणार, मग ते वाळवणार, मग ते तळणार, मग ते so much processing. So nutritional value is zero and artificial tests. Are you understanding me? So maybe you will talk about the communicable diseases, non-communicable diseases, good feeding habits. Start with that, educating them, and then gradually come to environment safety. All right. And changing their habits such that the surrounding will be cleaned. Ma'am, I hope I have answered. Students, any question? Here, put in. Face the audience. I will hear you.
Sir, you said ki we collect more waste from the waters, like all the land waste come to water, and we collect it to. Then हम उसे dump कैसे करें? Like how to dispose it in a proper way?
All such events are always with BMC involved. So what you do only is that you hand it over to BMC. It is then their lookout what is to be done with it. However, what I will say again to you all is that please do not just participate in the cleaning drives, but see to it that no trash comes there. Preach about that. I have told you earlier that in maybe 70s, 60s, 70s, there was no plastic at all. There was no plastic at all. त्यावेळी तुम्हाला सांगतो कचकडं मिळायचं. कचकडं म्हणजे हे दाबलं की फुटणार. कट्टकनी, आणि फक्त थोडीशी खेळणी असायची तशी कचकड्याची, बस. बाकी प्लास्टिक नव्हतं. अँड स्टील वी यूज टू लिव्ह हॅपीली, नॉट एव्हर आफ्टर देन. If you want to live happily ever after, you should remove plastic from your life. Alternatives are definitely there. Definitely there. Like the oil used to be sold in tins, T-I-N-S, tins. And these were perfectly recyclable. Milk used to come at the most in bottles. And bottles would be reused. Imagine, reusable. वो टेट्रा पैक जो होता है ना, वो प्लास्टिक से भी ज़्यादा खतरनाक है. प्लास्टिक से ज़्यादा खतरनाक है. तो एक तो पहली बात, बाहर के रेडीमेड ड्रिंक्स लेना बंद ही कर दो. मस्त कोकम शरबत, पनवल. You can carry bottles that will be keeping you healthy and also protecting the environment. Okay, so little bit efforts in carrying things, that's all. Don't purchase drinking water in the bottles. Don't purchase it. Carry your own bottles. Maybe empty bottles you can get them filled at an appropriate place. Maybe in a restaurant you can, where you know there is proper filtered water available. Get it filled from there. Or maybe in your college there may be some good sources. Get your bottle filled. So carry empty bottle at least. Should be more than enough. Don't throw off the bottles. If you had to purchase, do not throw off. You can redesign its use. I've seen this again in schools में जाओ आप, वहाँ पे wealth from west बहुत सारे आर्टिकल्स बने दिखते हैं. द प्लास्टिक बॉटल्स, मीडिया पे वीडियोज अवेलेबल है, यूट्यूब पे वीडियोज अवेलेबल है, हाउ टू मेक डिफरेंट आर्टिकल्स यूजिंग दम. इफ नथिंग एल्स, उसके कैप को छोटा होल बना के बॉटम काट के आप गाड़ दो पेड़ के बाजू में. इट विल बी द ड्रिप इरिगेशन यू विल बी डूइंग. वेरी सिंपल. डोंट ऐड टू द ट्रैश, दैट्स ऑल. एंड स्प्रेड दिस. वो सिर्फ आपके पास में मत रखो, आपके भाई बहन, आपके फ्रेंड्स, आपके रिलेटिव्स, जितना मैक्सिमम लोगों को आप पहुंचा सकते हो ये पहुंचाओ. दैट इज द वे. स्प्रेड वर्ड. और स्टूडेंट्स, एक सिंपल चीज़ जो मैंने बहुत साल मेरे स्टूडेंट्स के साथ किया, आई यूज्ड टू टेक देम ऑन स्टडी टूर्स ऑफ सेवरल डेज एंड एवरीथिंग. देखो, आप खुद ऐसे बिहेव करना चाहिए कि स्टूडेंट लोग उससे सीखने चाहिए अपने आप. इफ यू डू नॉट परचेज द वाटर बॉटल, इफ यू डू नॉट थ्रो थिंग्स हियर एंड देयर, इफ सामने बैठा स्टूडेंट टॉफ़ी खा के उसका छिलका नीचे डालता है और आप साइलेंटली उठा के आपके खिस्से में डालते हो, तो दैट इज़ अ गुड लेसन. ट्राई एंड अंडरस्टैंड दिस. सो मेरी एक स्टूडेंट रहा करती थी, जो आई हैव सीन इट विथ माई ओन आइज. एक आदमी थूका, नीचे थूका. ये बच्ची दौड़ के गई उसके पास. क्यों थूके आप? देखो, when a student doesn't know, and particularly younger ones, still younger ones, if they do it na, adults, they are really ashamed. अभी हम लोग तो बन चुके हो गए. डिफिकल्ट फॉर अस यू नो टू चेंज अदरवाइज. लेकिन अगर छोटा बच्चा, बिलीव मी, आज से 30 साल पहले, माई सन वॉज स्मॉल देन, he had participated in a Cathay Pacific competition. एंड ही वन एंड साउथ अफ्रीका जाने को मिला उसको. वहाँ जाके आया. वहाँ जोहान्सबर्ग में तभी वर्ल्ड समिट हो रहा था. सो दे हैड दिस जूनियर समिट ऑन वाटर, issues on water, and I helped him and we prepared a presentation that he made there. लेकिन वो वहाँ से जाके आया ना, तो मुझे बोलता है कि अभी हम इको फ्रेंडली गणेश सेलिब्रेशन करेंगे. उस साल से मैं खुद घर में आइडॉल बनाता हूँ, इतना ही छोटा, और घर में ही विसर्जन करता हूँ. आई यूज़ नो हार्मफुल कलर्स एज फार एज पॉसिबल. तो होता क्या है ना, देखो तब तक मुझे भी आइडिया नहीं आया था, दो आई वॉज अ टीचर ऑलरेडी. ट्राई एंड अंडरस्टैंड दिस. आई लर्न इट फ्रॉम माई सन. सो टुडे आई हैव लर्न टू टारगेट द यंगेस्ट पॉसिबल पीपल फॉर दिस. व्हेन दे हैव द आइडियाज और उनके लिए तो टीचर गॉड होता है रियली. उनका वर्ड फाइनल होता है. छोटे बच्चे, प्राइमरी स्कूल के बच्चे, टीचर बोलेगा वो फाइनल है. पेरेंट्स को भी नहीं सुनने का है, बाकी किसी को नहीं सुनने का, रिलेटिव्स को नहीं सुनने का. टीचर ने बोला. तो यू कैन बिकम टीचर्स टू people in the slum, students in the slum. Do something for them, teach them things, and it would be really wondrous. Let me tell you one final thing. When you teach something to somebody, it remains perfectly fit here. You can memorize it forever. Try and understand this. So, teaching is the best way of learning. So, your students. So, whatever you want to learn, teach it to the people. You will learn it the best. बोलो और कुछ. It's not frequent that we meet. So students, I wanted them to be more inquisitive about things. Anyway, if there are no queries further, I think I should be stopping here.
Now that we have come at the end of this lecture, on the behalf of Sathe College Autonomous, the staff as well as the students of the college, as well as the Vigyan Prasar, who have been the organizing body for current lecture. Thank you, sir, for sharing with us the explicit knowledge that you had in this particular field. And I personally always have believed that whatever kind of research experience a man carries, okay, that is generally, that experience is generally seen in the talks that that particular person generally makes. So research basically brings a lot of experiential learning, and that is how we can actually give data with so much of statistics. It's quite, I'm quite humbled to know that you've been working in this field for the last 20 years. And as now also you are currently associated with this. So it's really great to know. At the end of the session, I would feel that as a student, I mean, I'm pretty young to you, so we are, and being teachers still, we are still students of science. So now we are not having answers, we are posed with a question. Each one of us here is posed with a question that now the environment is at an alarming deterioration. And if we don't do anything about the environment and the remediation of the environment in various aspects, what we would be just see is a lot of damage that's happening due to climate change. And definitely we would see more pandemics only. We would not be seeing much of productive growth in our country, neither globally. So each one of today has a take-home message that whatever we heard today, we have to understand the intensity and we have to spread the awareness to many more people around us. And at the same time, while we are living our routine life, we have to make a call whether we are as a call in sense that whether should I carry a plastic bottle or should I carry a metal bottle, get the water refilled, which is the simplest thing that each one of us can do. So replace or alternate the the ease that we are having in life, everything. And for every single ease, we are not only paying from our pockets, but our planet is also paying very badly. Okay, so if we want to have conducive environment to survive, we cannot run away to global countries, okay, because they are also equally facing the same hazards. So thank you once again, sir, to exposing us to this kind of alarming situation that we are currently in it. And I'm pretty sure at least 2 to 3 students here would get sensitized and would go ahead and try to work in the field of research so as to make solutions available for the current possible threat that we have in our oceans. Thank you once again.
इतनी देर झेल लिया तो और 1 मिनट झेलिए. I forgot, but your question had one more angle to it. Environment studies has been made compulsory at all levels today. And almost in every course, there is something called a project. Unfortunately, except for browsing through different sites and copy-paste materials, people do not do anything. I strongly suggest, आप लोग भी कल माँ पिताजी बनने वाले हो, अपने बच्चे के लिए प्रोजेक्ट मत करो. उनको करने बोलो. एंड स्मॉल टाइनीएस्ट प्रोजेक्ट कि भाई आपके भाजी वाले के पास भाजी कहाँ से आती है और वो बाद में क्या होता है उसका. On very small simple topics, if you really make a study, you would realize the situation firsthand and you will also find solutions. Please try and understand this. Projects, तो बच्चों ने क्या करना चाहिए? बच्चों ने प्रोजेक्ट्स करने चाहिए. जो भी आप इकोनॉमिक्स के स्टूडेंट्स हैं तो इकोनॉमिक एस्पेक्ट ऑफ इट, आप फिजिक्स के स्टूडेंट्स हैं तो फिजिक्स ऑफ इट, केमिस्ट्री के स्टूडेंट हैं तो केमिस्ट्री ऑफ इट, ज्योग्राफी के स्टूडेंट हैं तो there are always angles to everything that is happening around you. Please make projects, serious projects. If it is serious enough, you can even make a presentation at occasions of like every year on these 2 days, as I said, we have conferences, and an important part of that conference is project presentation by the students. We do encourage this. So like you are invited to Thane to present your project. So seriously, take projects, tiny ones, take projects. Thank you.